The summer heat pressed down on the small coastal town of Port Madison like a heavy blanket. Sarah Mitchell stood behind the counter of her family's hardware store, arranging boxes of nails with the same precision she'd once used to organize medical supplies in combat zones halfway around the world. At 32, Sarah had the kind of presence that made people look twice, not because she was particularly tall or striking, but because of the way she carried herself, straight-backed, alert, with eyes that seemed to see everything. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a plain gray t-shirt that exposed the edges of a tattoo on her left shoulder. The bell above the door chimed, and three women walked in. Sarah recognized them immediately. Corinne Hendricks, president of the Port Madison Women's Club, flanked by her two constant companions, Diane and Bate. They were the kind of women who measured their worth by their husbands' positions and their own ability to control the social circles of their small town. "Well, hello, Sarah," Corinne said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I need some garden supplies. We're doing a beautification project at the community center." Sarah nodded and came around the counter. "What exactly are you looking for?" As she reached up to point out the gardening section, her sleeve shifted, revealing more of the tattoo. It was an intricate design, a trident surrounded by an anchor and eagle, with what looked like military insignia woven into the pattern. Diane noticed it first. Her eyes widened and she let out a small laugh. "Oh my goodness, Corinne, look at that." Corinne turned, her lips curling into a smirk. "Sarah, is that supposed to be some kind of military tattoo?" Sarah's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. "Yes, ma'am, it is." Bate joined in, her voice loud enough to carry through the store. "How adorable. Did you get that to support the troops? That's so sweet. My nephew is in the army, you know, a real soldier." "I'm aware of what it means," Sarah said quietly. Corinne stepped closer, examining the tattoo with exaggerated interest. "You know, I think it's wonderful that you young people want to show your patriotism. But honey, some of these military tattoos are supposed to be earned. I'd hate for you to run into an actual veteran who might be offended." Sarah felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest, but she'd learned long ago to control it. "I appreciate your concern. Now about those garden supplies." "Oh, we're just trying to help," Diane said, exchanging glances with the others. "It's just that some symbols are sacred, you know. Like, that trident design is what the Navy SEALs use. It would be terribly disrespectful for someone who hadn't actually served to wear something like that." "I understand the significance," Sarah replied, her voice growing colder. Corinne patted her arm in a condescending gesture that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Of course you do, dear. We're not questioning your intentions. We know you've had a hard time since your father passed. Running this store all alone must be difficult. But really, you should think about having that removed or covered up. What if a real SEAL came in here? They take that sort of thing very seriously." Sarah's father had been a Navy veteran, and this store had been his dream. After he died 2 years ago, she'd left her military career to come home and keep it running. These women knew that. They knew everything about everyone in Port Madison. What they didn't know was the truth about Sarah's own service. "I'll keep that in mind," Sarah said, turning away to gather the supplies they'd asked for. "Will this be all?" The women continued to whisper and giggle as Sarah rang up their purchases. Just as they were leaving, Corinne turned back with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Sarah, one more thing. The town council is having a special meeting next week about the Memorial Day ceremony. We're planning to honor real veterans this year, people who actually served. I know your father was Navy, God rest his soul, but we're focusing on recent conflicts. You understand?" Sarah understood perfectly. They were making sure she knew her place. After they left, Sarah locked the door and flipped the sign to closed, even though it was only 4 o'clock. She walked to the small office in the back and sank into her father's old chair. The wooden desk was covered with invoices and receipts the daily grind of keeping a small business alive. On the wall hung a photograph of her father in his Navy uniform, young and proud. Next to it was a shadow box containing his medals and citations. He'd served on a destroyer during peacetime, never saw combat, but he'd been so proud of his service. He'd been even prouder when Sarah enlisted. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found a name she hadn't called in months. Captain Jennifer "Hawk" Morrison, one of the few people who knew Sarah's full story. The phone rang 3 times before a crisp voice answered. "Sarah Mitchell, this is a surprise." "Hey Hawk, how are things at Coronado?" "Busy as ever. What's going on? You sound off." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Just small-town politics, nothing I can't handle." "Sarah, I've seen you handle insurgents in Kandahar without breaking a sweat. What's really going on?" Sarah told her about the encounter in the store, about Corinne and her friends, about the constant small cruelties she'd endured since coming home. In the military, she'd been respected for her skills and dedication. Here, she was just the hardware store girl with the dead father and the questionable tattoo. "You know you could shut them down in about 5 seconds, Hawk said. "Show them your DD-214, your medals, tell them the truth." "My father made me promise to keep it quiet," Sarah said softly. "He said this town wouldn't understand, that they'd treat me differently, ask too many questions. He wanted me to have a normal life when I came back." "Sarah, your father loved you, but he was wrong about this. You earned that tattoo. You earned every bit of respect that comes with it." "I know, but I made him a promise." Hawk sighed. "All right, but if things get worse, you call me. The community here doesn't forget its own." After hanging up, Sarah sat in the growing darkness of the office. She thought about the years she'd spent in service, the training that had nearly broken her, the missions she could never talk about. She thought about the men and women who'd stood beside her, who'd trusted her with their lives. And she thought about the tattoo on her shoulder, inked by a master artist at a shop near Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. The same artist who'd done work for dozens of operators. The man who'd looked at her orders and her record and said, "It's an honor, ma'am." The tattoo was more than just ink. Every line, every symbol told a story. The trident represented her service with the teams, the anchor for the operations at sea, the eagle for the missions from the air, and woven into the design, in tiny script only visible up close, were the names of the 3 teammates she'd lost on her final deployment. Sarah reached for the framed photograph on the corner of the desk. It showed a group of operators on a tarmac, faces obscured by shadows and tactical gear. She was the only woman in the photo, and you couldn't tell that unless you knew exactly where to look. She'd been a Navy combat medic, one of the first women selected to support SEAL teams in combat zones. For 4 years, she deployed with various teams, earning their trust one mission at a time. She'd pulled wounded operators from firefights, performed emergency surgery in the back of helicopters, and kept her cool when everything went to hell. The tattoo wasn't just authorized. It had been encouraged. The team commander himself had told her she'd earned the right to wear the insignia, that she was one of them. But her father had been worried. "These people won't understand," he'd said during his final days, weak from the cancer that was taking him. "They'll think you're showing off. They'll ask questions you can't answer. Promise me you'll keep it quiet, Sarah. Promise me you'll just run the store and have a peaceful life." So she'd promised. And she'd kept that promise even as women like Corinne Hendricks made her feel small and insignificant in the town where she'd grown up. Sarah stood and walked to the window overlooking Main Street. Port Madison was a good town, mostly. People were friendly, supportive. But there was a social hierarchy, and Corinne Hendricks sat at the top of it. Her husband was the mayor, her brother was the police chief, and her father owned half the commercial real estate in town. What Corinne wanted, Corinne got. And for some reason, she seemed to have decided that Sarah needed to be taken down a peg. The next few days passed quietly. Sarah opened the store each morning, helped customers, closed up each evening. She tried not to think about the upcoming Memorial Day ceremony, about being excluded from honoring the veterans of her own generation. Then on Friday afternoon, the bell above the door chimed and a man walked in. He was in his 50s, with silver hair and the kind of posture that screamed military. He wore khaki pants and a polo shirt, but Sarah's trained eye caught the subtle signs. The way he scanned the room upon entering, the alertness in his gaze, the physical fitness that came from decades of discipline. "Can I help you find something?" Sarah asked. The man smiled. "Actually, I'm looking for Sarah Mitchell. Would that be you?" Sarah's guard went up immediately. "That's me, and you are." Commander Jack Reeves, U.S. Navy, retired. He extended his hand and his grip was firm, professional. "I'm in town for a few weeks, rented a place on the water. Heard this was the best hardware store around." "We try," Sarah said carefully. "What do you need?" "Honestly, just some basic tools. I'm doing repairs on the deck, but I also wanted to introduce myself. I heard you're organizing the Memorial Day ceremony." Sarah shook her head. "No, sir, that would be the women's club. Karen Hendricks is in charge." Commander Reeves frowned. "Interesting. I was told the store owner was coordinating with the VFW. Your father was Navy, correct?" "Yes, sir. He passed 2 years ago." "I'm sorry for your loss. The Navy's a family. We take care of our own." As he spoke, Sarah helped him gather the supplies he needed. They talked easily, and Sarah found herself relaxing. There was something about being around someone who understood the military culture, even if he didn't know about her own service. As she was ringing up his purchases, Commander Reeves noticed her tattoo. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't comment. Instead, he thanked her for her help and said he'd be back. Sarah watched him leave, a strange feeling settling in her stomach. Something was about to change. She could feel it. The weekend brought more tourists to Port Madison, and Sarah was busy enough to push her worries aside. The hardware store did steady business. People needed fishing supplies, beach chairs, tools for their rental cottages. She smiled, made change, and tried not to think about Memorial Day coming up fast. Sunday afternoon, the bell chimed and Commander Reeves came back in. This time, he wasn't alone. The man with him was younger, maybe 40, built like a tank and carrying himself with the same unmistakable military bearing. He had dark eyes that missed nothing and a presence that seemed to fill the small store. "Sarah," Commander Reeves said with a warm smile, "this is an old friend of mine. Captain Mike Donovan, also retired Navy." Sarah shook the captain's hand. "Welcome to Mitchell's Hardware. What can I help you gentlemen find?" "Actually," Commander Reeves said, "we wanted to talk to you about Memorial Day. Captain Donovan here is part of a veterans organization that helps coordinate ceremonies around the country. We heard Port Madison's celebration could use some support." Sarah led them to the small seating area near the back where her father used to sit with his old Navy buddies and swap stories. "I appreciate the offer, but Karen Hendricks has everything under control. She's very particular about how things are run." The two men exchanged glances. Captain Donovan leaned forward. "Ms. Mitchell, we've been in town for a few days. We've heard things about how the ceremony is being organized, about who's being honored and who's being left out." "It's fine," Sarah said quickly. "It's their event. I'm just here to run my father's store." Commander Reeves studied her for a long moment. "Your father was Thomas Mitchell, correct? Served on the USS Gridley." "Yes, sir." "Good man. I never met him, but I know people who served with him. They said he was proud of his daughter." He paused. "Very proud." Sarah's throat tightened. "He was a good father." "I'm sure he was. Sarah, I'm going to be direct with you. That tattoo on your shoulder, it's not something you get at a random shop. The detail work, the specific design elements, those are very particular. I've seen work like that before on people who have earned the right to wear it." Sarah's heart began to pound. "Sir, Captain Donovan held up a hand. "You don't have to explain anything to us, but we wanted you to know that if you're being excluded from the Memorial Day ceremony because people in this town don't understand your service, that's not right. And if you want, we can help fix it." "How?" Sarah asked quietly. "Leave that to us," Commander Reeves said with a slight smile. "But we'll need your permission to share some information. Not everything, just enough to make sure you're treated with the respect you've earned." Sarah thought about her promise to her father, but she also thought about Corinne Hendricks and her friends, about being made to feel ashamed of something she was proud of, about the other young veterans in town who might be facing similar treatment. "What kind of information?" she asked. "Just verification of your service. Your branch, your role, the fact that you deployed in support of combat operations. The details can stay classified, but people should know you served and served honorably." Sarah looked at the photograph of her father on the wall. She could almost hear his voice. "I just wanted you to be safe, sweetheart, to have a normal life." But maybe a normal life wasn't what she needed. Maybe the truth was better than hiding. "Okay," she said finally, "but nothing that would compromise operational security, nothing about specific missions or—" "Of course," Captain Donovan assured her. "We know the rules. We just want to make sure you're included in the ceremony, that you're recognized as a veteran like you should be." The two men left with promises to be in touch. Sarah closed up the store early and went upstairs to the small apartment she'd lived in since coming home. It had been her childhood bedroom once, but now it was her entire world, a few rooms above a hardware store in a town that didn't really know her. She made herself dinner and tried to watch television, but her mind kept wandering. What had she just agreed to? What would happen when Corinne Hendricks found out the truth? The answer came sooner than she expected. Monday morning, Sarah opened the store to find Corinne standing outside, arms crossed, face red with fury. "How dare you?" Corinne hissed as soon as Sarah unlocked the door. "Excuse me. Don't play innocent with me. I got a call this morning from some Navy captain claiming you're a veteran who should be honored at the ceremony. He had the nerve to tell me that I'd made a mistake excluding you, that you have more combat experience than most of the veterans we're planning to honor." Sarah took a deep breath. "Commander Reeves and Captain Donovan are trying to help. I served 4 years in the Navy, Corinne. I deployed to combat zones. I thought you knew that. You were a medic or something, right? That's not the same as being a real soldier. That's not the same as infantry or SEAL teams or—" "I was a Navy combat medic assigned to support SEAL teams," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the anger boiling inside her. "I deployed 4 times to Afghanistan and Iraq. I treated wounded operators under fire. I earned that tattoo you mocked in this very store." Corinne's face went pale, then flushed even darker. "You're lying. Women don't serve with SEAL teams. They don't." They didn't, traditionally, but the military started integrating women into combat support roles. I was selected for the program. I went through additional training at Coronado, and I served with distinction until I was injured on my final deployment and decided to come home to take care of my father. "I don't believe you," Corinne said flatly. "If this were true, you would have said something before. You would have told people. This is exactly the kind of stolen valor that—" "Stolen valor," Sarah's voice rose despite her best efforts to stay calm. "I have my DD-214. I have my medical records from Walter Reed. I have letters of commendation from team commanders. I have everything I need to prove my service. The only reason I didn't say anything before is because my father asked me not to. He wanted me to have a quiet life. But I'm done being quiet." Corinne stepped closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Listen to me very carefully, Sarah. My husband is the mayor. My brother is the police chief. My family has influence in this town that you can't begin to understand. If you push this, if you try to make yourself the center of attention at our Memorial Day ceremony, I will make your life hell. I will make sure every contractor in town knows to buy their supplies somewhere else. I will make sure you lose this store. Do you understand me?" Sarah met her gaze without flinching. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining reality to you. You're nobody in this town. You're the girl whose father felt sorry for her and left her a failing business. Don't pretend to be something you're not." "I'm not pretending anything. I am a Navy veteran. I served my country, and I have every right to be part of that ceremony." Karen smiled, and it was one of the coldest things Sarah had ever seen. "We'll see about that." She turned and walked out, leaving Sarah shaking with rage and adrenaline. It was the same feeling she'd had before combat operations, the sharp clarity that came with knowing a fight was coming. Sarah pulled out her phone and called Hawk. "They're threatening me," she said as soon as her friend answered. "The mayor's wife is threatening to destroy my business if I don't back down." Hawk's voice went hard. "Did she use those exact words?" "Close enough. She said she'd make sure contractors don't buy from me, that I'd lose the store." "That's a mistake on her part. A big one. Sarah, I need you to document everything. Every conversation, every threat, and then I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make some calls, and Sarah, that promise you made to your father, he made it out of love, but he was wrong. You've done nothing to be ashamed of. It's time people knew the truth." Over the next 2 days, Sarah felt like she was waiting for a storm to break. The store was unusually quiet. Several contractors who usually bought from her went to the big box store 2 towns over instead. Word was spreading, she realized. Karen was making good on her threat. But Sarah also noticed other changes. Commander Reeves came in each day, always with a different retired military person. They bought supplies, chatted with Sarah, and made sure other customers heard them talking about her service in casual, respectful ways. "My friend here served in Afghanistan," Commander Reeves said to an older customer. "Did a hell of a job keeping our warriors alive. We don't forget people like that." Slowly, the narrative in town began to shift. The VFW post commander came in personally to apologize for not reaching out sooner, and to insist that Sarah be included in the Memorial Day ceremony. The local newspaper editor stopped by, asking if Sarah would consent to an interview about her service. And then, on Thursday afternoon, a black SUV pulled up outside the store. A man got out, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. He was in his early 50s, tall and powerfully built, with iron-gray hair and the kind of face that had seen hard things and survived them. He wore civilian clothes, but there was no mistaking what he was. Or rather, what he had been. Sarah knew him. Not personally, but she'd seen his photograph in briefing rooms, heard his name spoken with a mixture of respect and awe. Commander James "Hammer" Sullivan, one of the most decorated SEAL operators of his generation. Now retired and running a security consulting firm, but still a legend in the special operations community. He walked into the store and Sarah's military training took over. She stood straighter, her voice more formal. "Can I help you, sir?" Commander Sullivan looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "Sarah Mitchell, I've heard a lot about you." "Sorry." "Captain Morrison is a friend of mine, so is Commander Reeves. They told me about your situation." He glanced around the empty store. "Mind if we talk in private?" Sarah led him to the back office, her mind racing. Why was a man like Commander Sullivan here? What did he want? He settled into a chair and gestured for her to sit. "I'm going to be direct with you, Sarah. I'm in town because I heard about what's happening with the Memorial Day ceremony. I heard that a veteran who served with distinction is being excluded and threatened because some small-minded people don't understand or don't want to understand what you did. I appreciate your concern, sir, but—" "I'm not finished." His voice was firm but not unkind. "I also heard that you've been keeping quiet about your service because of a promise to your father. I respect that. Family means everything. But there comes a time when the truth matters more than comfort, and that time is now. He leaned forward. Sarah, do you know what we value most in the teams? It's not strength or shooting skills or any of that, it's trust. When we bring support personnel into our operations, we need to know we can trust them with our lives. And you earned that trust. Multiple team commanders put their names on the line to keep you with us, deployment after deployment. That means something. Sarah felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. I just did my job, sir. You did more than your job. I've read your file. I know about the firefight outside Kandahar where you kept a wounded operator alive for 45 minutes while waiting for exfil, all while under enemy fire. I know about the helicopter crash where you pulled 3 men from burning wreckage. He paused. I know about the IED strike that killed 3 teammates and left you with injuries that ended your deployment career. Sarah looked away. She didn't like to think about that day, about the explosion that had torn through their vehicle, about the desperate minutes trying to save men who were already gone. Their names are on your tattoo, Commander Sullivan said softly. That's what Hawk told me. You carry them with you. Always, Sarah whispered. Then it's time to honor them by standing tall, by letting people know what you did, what they did, what all of us do in the dark places so others can sleep safely. Your father wanted to protect you, and I understand that. But the best way to honor his memory is to live your truth. He stood and extended his hand. Memorial Day ceremony is this Monday. I'll be there. So will about 20 other retired operators who are coming in to support you. And I promise you, Sarah, no small-town bully is going to push around one of ours. Not while we're still breathing. Memorial Day morning dawned clear and bright over Port Madison. Sarah stood in front of her bathroom mirror, trying to decide what to wear. She'd laid out 3 options: casual civilian clothes, her old Navy uniform that still fit, or something in between. Her phone buzzed with a text from Hawk. Wear the uniform, you earned it. Sarah picked up the Navy working uniform she'd carefully maintained over the years. The blue camouflage pattern still looked sharp, the creases still perfect. She dressed slowly, methodically, the familiar routine bringing back memories. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. For 2 years, she'd been hiding, playing small, trying to be invisible. But the woman looking back at her now stood tall, shoulders back, chin up. This was who she really was. She walked downstairs and locked up the store. The ceremony was at 10 o'clock in the town square, and she wanted to arrive early. The square was already filling with people when Sarah arrived. A temporary stage had been set up near the war memorial, decorated with flags and bunting. Corinne Hendricks stood near the stage with her committee, directing volunteers and checking lists. When Corinne saw Sarah in uniform, her face went white, then red. You have some nerve, Corinne hissed, marching over. This is a formal ceremony. You can't just show up in costume. It's not a costume, Sarah said calmly. It's my uniform. I'm a veteran. I have every right to be here. You have no right to make a spectacle of yourself. This day is about honoring real heroes, not. Not what? A deep voice interrupted. Commander Sullivan appeared beside Sarah, also in uniform. His chest was covered in ribbons and medals, including the Navy Cross. Not combat veterans who risked their lives for their country. Corinne faltered, clearly recognizing the authority in his bearing if not the man himself. Who are you? Commander James Sullivan, U.S. Navy, retired. And you must be Mrs. Hendricks. I've heard a lot about you. More veterans began arriving. Commander Reeves and Captain Donovan, both in uniform. Then more, men and women Sarah recognized from her time in service, people who'd flown in from across the country on a few days' notice. Every one of them wore their uniforms, their ribbons, their pride. They formed up around Sarah, not obviously but clearly, a wall of support. Corinne's brother, Police Chief Hendricks, hurried over. What's going on here? This is a community event, not some kind of military demonstration. Really? Commander Sullivan said mildly. "I thought Memorial Day was specifically a military holiday, to honor those who died in service to our country. Are we in the wrong place?" The police chief looked uncertain. A crowd was gathering, and Sarah could see phones coming out to record the confrontation. Mayor Hendricks joined his wife and brother-in-law, his politician's smile firmly in place. "I'm sure we can work this out. There seems to be some confusion." "No confusion," Commander Sullivan said. "We're here to honor all veterans, including Sarah Mitchell, who served 4 years as a Navy combat medic in support of naval special warfare operations. She deployed 4 times to combat zones and was wounded in action. The only confusion is why she wasn't included in your ceremony from the start." Karen found her voice again. We don't know that any of that is true. Anyone can put on a uniform and make claims." "Are you accusing me of lying?" Sarah asked quietly. "I'm saying we have standards. We can't just take someone's word." "Here are her orders," Commander Sullivan said, pulling out folded papers. "Her DD-214 showing honorable discharge, letters of commendation from 3 different SEAL team commanders. And here," he held up his phone, "is a video call with Admiral Richardson, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command, who'd like to speak to you personally about Sarah's service." The crowd had grown larger. People were murmuring, and Sarah could see the tide turning. The mayor's face had gone pale. He knew a political disaster when he saw one. "Perhaps we should take this somewhere private," he suggested. "Why?" asked a voice from the crowd. It was Mr. Peterson, who owned the auto shop and had known Sarah since she was a child. "I'd like to hear this. Sarah's dad was my friend. He never said his daughter was a war hero." "He didn't want the attention," Sarah said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He asked me to keep it quiet, to live a normal life. And I tried. But keeping quiet meant letting people disrespect my service, disrespect the teammates I lost, disrespect everything we fought for." She turned to look at Karen. "You mocked my tattoo. You called it pretend patriotism. These symbols," she pulled back her sleeve fully, showing the intricate design, "represent real people, real missions, real sacrifices. The names written here are men who died saving others. They were my friends, my brothers in arms, and I carry them with me every single day." Someone in the crowd started clapping. Then another person joined in. Within seconds, applause filled the square. Karen looked around desperately. "Bill, do something," she hissed at her husband. The mayor cleared his throat. I think we may have made a mistake. Sarah, if you'd like to participate in the ceremony." "No," Sarah said firmly. "I don't want to participate in your ceremony. I want to be included in it as a veteran with the respect I earned. The same respect you're showing to every other veteran here." "Of course," the mayor said quickly. "Of course, we'll add you to the program, And I want an apology," Sarah continued. "A public apology for the way I was treated, for the threats made against my business, for the disrespect shown to my service." Karen's face went purple. "I will not." "You will," Commander Sullivan said quietly. "Or we can discuss this further with the media that's currently arriving." Sarah turned to see news vans pulling up. Hawk had been busy, she realized. This wasn't just local news, those were network affiliates. The mayor grabbed his wife's arm and whispered urgently in her ear. Karen's expression cycled through rage, disbelief, and finally resignation. "I apologize," she said through gritted teeth. "I was misinformed about your service record." "Not good enough," said Captain Donovan. "A real apology." Karen took a shaky breath. "I apologize for questioning your service, for mocking your tattoo, and for threatening your business. I was wrong." The words clearly cost her, but Sarah felt no satisfaction, only a deep weariness. This was why her father had wanted her to stay quiet. Not because he was ashamed of her, but because he knew how exhausting it would be to fight for basic respect in her own hometown. But he'd also taught her to stand up for what was right. "Thank you," Sarah said. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to join my fellow veterans." She walked toward the memorial where the other veterans had gathered. As she moved through the crowd, people reached out to shake her hand, to thank her for her service. Some of them looked ashamed that they hadn't known, hadn't asked, hadn't cared to find out. The ceremony began at 10 o'clock sharp. It was different from what Karen had planned. The veterans themselves had quietly reorganized it. Instead of speeches from politicians, there were testimonials from those who had served. Stories of sacrifice and courage, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, she walked to the microphone with her heart pounding. She looked out at the crowd, at the faces of people she'd known her whole life, and took a breath. "My name is Sarah Mitchell," she said. "I'm a Navy veteran and a combat medic. I deployed 4 times in support of naval special warfare operations. I'm not a SEAL. I want to be clear about that. The men and women who earned that trident go through hell and back to get it, and I would never claim their title." She pulled back her sleeve, showing the tattoo to everyone. "But I served alongside them. I trained with them. I bled with them. And when they were wounded, they trusted me to keep them alive. That's what this tattoo represents. Not stolen valor, not pretend patriotism. Just the simple truth that I was there, that I served, that I earned the right to wear these symbols." 3 names are written into this design: Petty Officer Marcus Thompson, Lieutenant Aaron Kim, Senior Chief Robert Hayes. They died on a road outside Kandahar when our vehicle hit an IED. I tried to save them. I failed. And I carry that failure with me every single day, along with their memory. Her voice broke slightly, but she pushed through. "My father asked me not to talk about my service because he wanted me to have a peaceful life. He wanted to protect me from questions, from judgment, from exactly what happened this past week. And I love him for that. But I think he was wrong. Not because I want attention or recognition, but because staying silent meant dishonoring the people I served with, the people who died, the people who trusted me. And I won't do that anymore. So yes, I'm a veteran. Yes, I served in combat. And yes, I'm proud of that service, even though it cost me more than most people will ever understand." The crowd was silent. Then from the back someone started singing. It was an older veteran, his voice rough but strong. "Oh, say can you see?" Others joined in. The national anthem filled the square, and Sarah stood at attention, her hand over her heart, tears streaming down her face. After the ceremony, people lined up to talk to Sarah, to apologize, to thank her, to share their own stories. The owner of the big box store 2 towns over came over personally. "I bought supplies from you before," he said. "Then I got a call from someone suggesting I might want to take my business elsewhere. I'm ashamed I listened. I'd like to make it right. I'll be sending all my contractors to your store from now on." Others made similar promises. The contractor who'd stopped buying from her apologized and placed a large order on the spot. Sarah realized that Karen's threats had backfired spectacularly. Commander Sullivan found her as the crowd was dispersing. "You did good today." "I just told the truth. That's all any of us can do. Sarah, I want you to know, the community you served with, we don't forget our own. If you ever need anything, you call, got it?" "Yes, sir." He handed her a card with his contact information. "I mean it, anything. And consider coming to the next team reunion. You're more than welcome." After everyone left, Sarah walked back to the hardware store. For the first time in 2 years, she felt like she could breathe. The weight of hiding, of staying small, was gone. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Hawk. "Proud of you, sister." Sarah smiled and typed back, "Thank you for everything." That evening, as Sarah was closing up the store, the bell chimed one last time. She looked up to see an elderly woman she didn't recognize. "Can I help you?" The woman smiled gently. "I'm Dorothy Thompson. Marcus was my grandson." Sarah's breath caught. Marcus Thompson, one of the names on her tattoo. "I saw you at the ceremony," Dorothy continued. I saw his name on your shoulder. May I see it more closely?" Sarah came around the counter and showed her the tattoo. Dorothy traced the letters with a trembling finger. "He was so proud to serve," she said softly. "But I never knew there was a medic with them that day. No one ever told us. They just said the injuries were too severe, that nothing could have been done." "I tried," Sarah whispered. "I tried so hard." "I know you did, dear. I can see it in your eyes. You carry him with you." "Don't you, all of them?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Dorothy took her hand. "Thank you for trying to save him, for honoring his memory, for not forgetting. That means more than you could ever know." After Dorothy left, Sarah sat in the quiet store and cried. She cried for Marcus and Aaron and Robert. She cried for her father, who tried to protect her but couldn't protect her from her own memories. She cried for the years she'd spent hiding, and for the relief of finally being seen. And then she dried her eyes, locked up the store, and went upstairs to her apartment. Tomorrow would be busy. She had orders to fill, contractors to call back, a business to run. But tonight, for the first time since coming home, Sarah Mitchell slept peacefully. She'd honored her father's memory by running his store. And now, finally, she'd honored her own service by telling the truth. The tattoo on her shoulder was no longer a source of shame or secrecy. It was exactly what it had always been, a badge of honor earned through sacrifice, carried with pride.